Hi and welcome to the channel. My name is Patricia and today we're going to be making a sequin purse. For this you will need a few things. Some sequins. Here I have cupped sequins in turquoise and pink. Some matching yarn. Small scraps of cotton fabric. I am using a fat quarter I bought ages ago. A crochet hook. A stitch marker. Some fishing wire in the thinnest gauge that you can find it. Mine is 0.25 millimeters, I believe. A beading needle, or wide-eyed needle, as I think they're called. A regular needle and some thread. Some scissors, and last but not least, the kiss clasp frame. To begin, we want to take the big-eyed needle, or the beading needle, and thread the yarn through. Now, I'm not going to lie, this bit is the most tediously boring and dull part of the process, but it's something that has to be done because all the sequins need to be threaded on, and because of the number of rows and the number of stitches required for the purse, we literally have to thread on the same amount of sequins because each stitch is essentially going to have a sequin. The annoying thing about this is not only did I decide to use cupped sequins, I also arbitrarily decided that they should all face the same way. I made myself a lot of work. I mean, you can save about 2.5 hours worth of time if you just use flat sequins. What's the difference between cupped and flat sequins, I hear you ask? Nobody asked that. Well, the flat sequins are flat and the cupped sequins are cupped. No, all joking aside, the cupped sequins they have a faceted look to them. There's a concave and a convex side. So that's the difference. Now, because of the nature of crochet, you can actually figure out the exact amount of sequins that you're going to use, or going to need for that matter. However, I wouldn't necessarily rely on that because some sequins might have a manufacturing defect. Some of them may be only half, some of them may be broken, and you'd have to cut them out. So I would thread more sequins than actually needed. Now, how I figure out the amount of sequins I'm going to need is I essentially do it by thickness. So I will string on some sequins onto my yarn, measure out about 1 inch is worth, and then find out how many sequins are in that inch. And because I know the exact number of stitches that I'm going to have, I can therefore extrapolate the number of inches that I'm going to need. So that way it works out better. And then obviously I'll string on just a little bit more to give myself some leeway, because you don't want to run out of sequins just on your last stitch. That would be absolutely infuriating. But it's not the end of the world, and towards the end of the video, somewhere, or middle of the video, I'll tell you what to do if you do run out of sequins. When I was making this video, one of the things that I decided I questioned was how to make crochet videos interesting, and I don't think there is a way to do that. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love crochet. Crochet is life for me. However, sitting down and watching every single row being crocheted is just tedium personified. If I were to actually show you every single row, this would take about 4 hours, and I needed to get this video down to half an hour. And after my third edit, I was literally on an hour, and I had to cut so much out. So for beginners, I'm afraid this isn't going to be a tutorial. I'm not saying that beginners can't do this purse. They absolutely can. There's only one stitch involved, and that's the single crochet. American terminology I'm using here, by the way. But I just couldn't think of any other way but to just show the highlights, so I'm not going to be showing each individual row as it progresses. I didn't mention this before, but the keen-eyed crocheter will have noticed that I started this with a magic ring. Now, because of the magic ring, when you work the first row, it inevitably gets looser and looser, and then you're left with a gaping hole. However, the beauty of the magic ring is that you can pull on the tail and you can tighten that row straight back up. I'm going to shut up now, carry on crocheting, and let you enjoy the ambiance. I'll catch up with you when something significant happens. Okay, so the purse is now finally finished. I'm now going to use my embroidery needle to weave in and tuck in that tail. If you do this neatly enough, you might be able to get away without needing a lining, and that's simply because when we crocheted with the sequins, they came in on the wrong side of the crochet, which is the slightly messier side, and the inside of the purse is the right side and the prettier looking side of the crochet. I would actually recommend a lining, and I prefer to use a lining myself, just simply because, you know, wear and tear from the coins, it will eventually happen, and later on down the line you can change the lining if needs must. Using some colour matched thread and a whip stitch, go ahead and attach your lining onto the coin purse, and you'll probably want to follow the row of the last set of sequins. That's what I usually do, because the last couple of rows will be used to attach the frame. Attaching the frame is probably the next biggest headache. In this section I suggest going slow and using shorter lengths of fishing wire. Basically the opposite to what I did, but I have made quite a few of these, and I've managed to get a rhythm going. But essentially you want to go through each hole and make it look like a back stitch. So as you're going to the inside of the purse, go through the first hole, and then when you're coming back outside of the purse, you skip a hole and go into the second hole. So I hope that makes sense. Just as promised, this is what to do when you've run out of sequins or you didn't thread enough sequins to begin with. First, what you're going to need to do is to pull up your working loop and then cut off about maybe 2 to 3 inches worth of a tail, to give yourself enough space to work around later on. Now, I do this because I don't like weaving in yarn or bringing in needles and sewing. Oh, I can't stand sewing. But the way I'm going to show you now, you can just, you don't need to use any needles, don't need to use, you don't need to weave any threads in. You literally crochet the tails into the round as you go. What you saw there was me inserting the hook into the stitch and yarning over with the 2 tails, pulling them through the stitch, being essentially left with 3 hoops or 3 loops onto the hook. And then when I yarn over again, I'll pull through those 3 loops, and that will give me my single crochet. As you travel the tails along while you crochet, you're basically creating a sandwich between the last layer and the new layer, and those tails are going to be secured in between those 2 rows. So that creates a nice neat finish, and you'll be able to see that it's seamless, there's no knots, no unsightly bumps, and it creates a much cleaner finish. And with that, guys, we are completely finished. I love the way she turned out. She's very sparkly, very textured because of the cupped sequins, and I absolutely am in love with it. If you've made it this far into the video, I'd just like to say a big thank you, and hope that you'll consider supporting me with your likes, shares, and even a subscribe would be greatly appreciated. This is the first of many videos I have planned, and I intend to release one at least every 2 weeks on Fridays, depending on the complexity of the project. The next video will be in 2 weeks, so yeet that bell button to be notified of its release. But for now, I'll leave you with some shiny beauty shots. Thanks again, and see you next time. Bye!